Hey
Hey,
everyone.
we're here. It's morning for me, evening for some of y'all. Hope you're doing well. Let me take over the screen share. We'll get this thing going. Hope you're all having a good time, enjoying the challenge so far. Oh, look at that! I can just share right from the PDF. Even easier. All right, so let's start with introductions, I suppose. So my name is Thomas Winkley. I'm a technical marketing advocate here at Unity Technologies on the the social impact team.
Okay, my name is Saurav Chatterjee. I work on the engine support team in Unity, more of a software developer who works on fixing bugs with the engine and basically helping people use the Unity engine to make better games.
So you're the reason my stuff works so well. Thank you. I appreciate it.
One of them, of course, but well,
So I was thinking what we could do for this is first let's dive in and talk about what the awards are and who won, and then we can do code reviews of those games. Does that sound like what we should do?
I think yeah, I would go with that. Sure,
Cool.
and later we will hang back for any questions that our audience might have
Oh
for
yeah,
us.
and if you have questions while we're talking, of course there is a Q&A tab. You can drop them in. We'll do our best to type and answer at the end or during as we have some downtime. So with that, let's go to drumroll best overall concept. This game was creative, it was concise, it was pretty simple, and it was something that I found myself replaying 3 to 4 times at least. Swarab, I'm not sure how many times you played through it or what your thoughts on it were before we announced what the game
Oh,
was.
I think I have outplayed you, Thomas,
Okay.
on that one. I've played that quite a bit. I mean, when I started playing the game, I was blown by how simple it was, yet how fun it was. And the code base, of course, is also very, it's also very small. And yeah, I'm going to talk a lot about that. I
Oh,
really like how the code was designed in this one. There was no over engineering. Of course, the game itself is quite simple, but at the same time, it's very fun. So I don't know if we can share the link of this game to our audience, but I really suggest people go play this. You would like it.
we absolutely can. And so the winner of best overall concept from us is Moose in Space by Amanda Eugenia Loaiza Mena.
Woo!
This game's a blast. It's super fun. Um, Hopefully you're in chat, Amanda. If you're there, what a cool game. I had a great time playing it. I just super fun, and I think we might actually, if we have time today, take a second to play it. Um,
Mhm.
and I am going to drop the link to this. Let's see, do we have a chat? Yeah, I am going to drop the link to the game in chat if y'all want to try it. It's really good. So yeah, congrats. Best overall concept. Like you said, simple, fun, effective. The art style was really clean and put together well. It just played great.
Yep. Congratulations, Amanda. This is really nice made.
All right, let's go to our next award, which is best technical execution. This game I just thought overall had like a lot of complexity in it, and it just kind of worked, which I thought was really fun. And looking at the code base, I thought there were some really like clever solutions to things, and they did things differently than I would have done them in a couple of areas. But then I found myself going, "Wait, is that a better way to do it?" So I thought it was really interesting. How about you?
Yeah, I think the code base was really clever because this game initially, when I started just playing the game, I thought it would be quite a complex code base because there are a few projects out there which, and even in during the submission of this challenge, they are a little over engineered. I would say not a bad thing, but sometimes it could actually be very difficult to scale from that point. But this game is like if you think about it, it's a really technical game, but at the same time the code base is clever, just like you said, and it is also very elegant in my opinion
Yeah.
how things are done. The architecture is quite clear. I don't see a lot of scripts which are like super long or very difficult to understand what's going on there. So kudos, actually, very well made. There's
That's
a reason why we are awarding the team on
I
technical execution.
I agree, and that's actually I'm gonna push my door closed real quick because my dogs are celebrating that it's early morning. But I think that's the thing I've noticed in all three of these games is the code was very well managed. And like I said, the scripts weren't long. Like I think the longest script I saw was maybe 100 lines.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
really
basically, yeah.
concise. Anyway, we're beleaguering the point. So best technical execution is going to go to Chess of the Elements by Kelvin Lim. This game was really, really well engineered. It was really fun, um, and it was interesting. I think there were definitely some like tutorializing things that could go into the game a little bit more to like teach you to play it. And I think every once in a while the elemental system didn't. I couldn't tell always how it was functioning, but looking at the architecture, I thought it was well put together.
Also, I think, like, just to add to this and to tell people what this is about, this is a chess game, basically. But at the same time, you have specific elements to defeat other elements with. And if you can do that right, there's like a rock, paper, scissors thing
Yeah,
going on here, where once you have managed to beat the other piece with the correct element, you get one more chance, basically, one more turn to play. But at the same time, if you manage to do it with the wrong elements, but following the rules of chess here, you not just defeat the opponent's piece, but your piece gets taken off the board as well.
yeah,
So I think that's a very clever twist on the whole chess principles. So yeah,
I
very
definitely.
well made. And yeah, the code base was a delight to actually look through.
Yep. And we can talk about like some of the notes we had later when we do the code reviews, but really, really great, super cool game. So let's jump next to the most creative. I'm gonna be honest, this was a hard one for me to select. Because I feel like all the games were actually really, really creative, and definitely all the ones that are winning these awards right now probably could have been a contender for this award. But I will have to say, I think this one definitely earned it. I thought the twist on a classic was really good. I thought the mechanics were cool. What do you think, Swarov?
So when I started playing this, immediately I didn't have any idea what to do about it. And then I saw the mechanic basically, and it really blew my mind
Yep.
because I mean, that's almost what you want to do. I'm gonna talk more about it when we reveal the game because if I say anything more, I'll probably be spoiling it.
Fair. Yeah. So the most creative game, we're giving this one to Space Scavenger by Alexander Tigamorov. It was such a fun twist on Galaxian, I guess. Just really, really cool. So for those that are like, what do you mean? So the screenshot doesn't really show it too well, but if you look here, there's a ship that's about to hit me. But up here, there's a ship that has a gun in the middle that can actually fire. And the reason why this ship's little weapon slot is empty is because I stole it with my grappling hook. Um, and that is so fun. Like the idea that I can steal my enemy's weapon with a grappling hook as my power ups and then shoot back really added a really creative twist to this game.
So what I think would be even more fun for this is like immediately when I played this game, it reminded me of a game that I had a lot of fun playing back in the day called one of the Contra games.
Oh yeah.
And there you basically upgrade your gun as you go along if you collect power ups, right? Here, so far I have noticed we have like two types of fire shots from ships, two types of guns that we can choose. If we add like more variations of maybe something that is spreading or maybe something that has a special weapon, those would add a very nice twist to it. And looking at the code base, I feel it is actually very easy to do that for this game. It has
Yep.
been made modular enough. So yeah, I mean, this is really fun. And initially, one thing I would like to say here is that the control scheme of this game is a little off. So you play using the Z and the X key.
Yeah, it's almost like inverted right hand, left hand. Yeah.
Yeah, that felt a little off, but at the same time, I mean, there is the Unity's new input package that you can implement in this game,
Right.
Alexander, and you can map it to anything else or just basically give the player the option to match those keys to whatever they like.
Yep.
But otherwise, I think this is a very very nicely made game and very fun to play for sure.
Yep. Agreed. All right. Well, congratulations to those that won those top three awards. So again, just as a quick review, best overall concept went to Moose in Space, which is an absolute blast to play. Best technical execution was Chess of the Elements, and most creative was Space Scavenger. And we actually I dropped the links in the public chat for this event, so you can go play them, try them out, give them feedback, and hopefully enjoy them. I guess the next step would be to jump into the code review, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, let's do that.
Cool. I assume you want to do a moves in space first?
Yeah, let me actually start sharing my screen.
Perfect.
Um,
I'm actually really excited to get your take on the code here.
yeah, this is actually very. Just a sec. Yep, got it. Let me know if you can see my screen.
We got you. I see a nice big code window. It
Cool.
might not be a bad idea to zoom it in just a little bit for video quality, but
Yeah.
perfect.
All right. So basically, the game has a game manager. Game manager is like what you would expect. It's having the all the panels here. It recites them. Basically, the scene manager is asked to load a particular scene from build index. I really like how you are using the build index and not really a pre-baked scene. That is great. Yeah, you're loading the scene here. That's all. That's fine, and that's actually very easy to understand as well.
Yeah.
Um, we have this is something that I don't really condone. I mean, I don't really like this at all, because when you're using a some empty function that is based on Unity's the reflection system,
Hmm.
this is not great because it will not give you a good performance. Like it can bring up those markers on profiler window where you're using something but you're not really using it for the fullest. So I would mark it as something that could be improved, but because this is just one instance here and the game is fairly small, so it is not really a problem for
Hmm.
for us here. Also, this script is dead code basically. So unless it is attached to something uh, in the editor, this will not be executed. So in that way, also it's fine. This is some audio source. That's all fine. This I really liked. So for people who haven't played this game, the stars in the background kind of UFO. When the UFO is approaching you, the sky, it shows you stars and everything. That has a parallax effect. I really like that.
Yep. Same.
And the way it was made, it's all mathematics and no animations or any such thing. No, like, how do you say, the clipping effects, like that thing kind of goes on and on, and you basically have like I've seen projects where people just animate a bunch of layers and vary the speed between layers and do the parallax effect that way. It's very clunky and difficult to manage later, but with something like this solution, it's actually quite good. So I think this is well done. You have a UFO controller. Of course, there's a what the game does is there's a UFO that's flying around,
Yep.
and the UFO is going to like put a light beam, and you are the cow who needs to go left and right to basically avoid that light beam. So this is the script for the UFO. Um, and yeah, I mean, this is everything that's being done here, which is moving the UFO left and right. It's kind of, I mean, this is being destroyed. I'll probably just not do this instead of destroying. I'll probably just uh, keep it hidden somewhere off the
Yep.
screen limit and then enable it when you are getting it ready. But
Yep.
okay, again. Uh, this one might not be the best way of doing that. What you want to do is cache this into something like an index for the
Yep.
animator. That way, the animator is not really evaluating a string, which is, of course, a more expensive operation. Rather, it would be evaluating an int, which is one of the indices or one of the states that it is in. So that is one. Well, this is basically nitpicking, but you can do that to improve slight amount of performance there. Well, you're spawning UFO. You don't really need to do that more than once if you were not destroying it here. So, this
Yep.
is being used. Move once you're out of bounds, you're being destroyed. So instead of destroying, you can just spawn it once and just move it out of the screen bounds, and then just keep moving it left and right.
Yep.
Unless you want to have more than one type of UFO, but then again, the concept of pooling is also
Yeah.
also
I was gonna add.
interesting.
I was gonna say that too. Like, I think especially with how, like, I don't know if there's ever more than 5, 6 UFOs on screen, so you could absolutely pool like 10 UFOs, right? And Unity actually has a object pooling library available for you that makes it
Mhm.
really easy to set up. So I love that call out.
Yeah, and when it comes to UI, yeah, it's a good decision to have all the controls of the UI in one script, although there's not really that much UI in the game. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think the game was very simple. The scripts are even more simple, and there was no over engineering. The game was not really taking itself too seriously to actually have like something like patterns or like what have you. For example, something like we are going to talk about this on a different project that actually holds the scale that way, but there is no things like interfacing or like base classes or stuff like that, which just adds on to the compilation, was not needed for this game. Of course you can do it, of course you can like create whole MVC for this particular project or any other project, but I really like the short and simple and sweet way of programming this game. Very nicely done.
Yeah, agreed.
So would you like to do the next one?
Yeah, I'll jump into reviewing some of the space. Let's see,
Sure.
space scavenger code. Let me just pull up the GitHub to make sure I've got it ready.
Yeah, I'll just stop sharing.
All right, cool. Let's see. Let's do a whole. Well, we'll just do this Chrome tab here. Okay, so.
While you're doing it,
Mhm.
I would like to answer a question from Marcel. Why are so many private variables that seem like they don't change? They should be either serialized or editor or constants. Yes, you are actually right on a lot of accounts. But on this one, because of the scope of the game, I would,
Yep.
rather forgive it because it's probably there just to tweak and balance the game. But yeah, they could be serialized for the editor. But the problem is if you have like a lot of variables in the editor, then it just becomes difficult for anyone who's just working on the game in terms of balancing. So probably that is why.
Yeah, I think that's a fair
Uh,
assumption because that's actually something I noticed too in the code. I was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of like almost like just private variables that are just like set to a value, right? But again, I think for the scope of the game, it just kind of worked, and it made sense.
yeah,
I do like the question from Chubo about which external editor IDE would you recommend to use with Unity. I think that's a
well,
that's a heavy
that's
question.
that's more like choosing a religion, isn't it,
Yeah.
for us programmers?
Yep.
Um, so my preferred IDE is probably the one you just saw. That's Rider,
Yep.
but I also work with Visual Studio and VS Code. They're probably my top three. Well, they're the only three I have used with Unity.
I would have to agree on top three, and it's funny because I love Writer, but I live in Visual Studio. But also from my perspective, I teach, right? And so I work with a lot of beginner programmers, and so I try to like match what they're going to be using, and they probably have not formed an opinion on IDEs yet, and so I assume they're going to be using the default, which is Visual Studio. Um,
Well, Visual Studio is not really supported in Mac very soon, I guess. So we will have to like
yeah,
move people to VS Code. VS Code is actually a pretty good IDE, by the way. It's the
it's
same.
great.
It's like a free version of Rider without the niceties of Rider, but at the same time, it's the same interface that you get on Windows and Mac. So that's actually quite good.
Yeah, that's actually I didn't even consider that. It might be time to move to VS Code overall. I use VS Code for all my web development work, so great application. All right, so let's look at Space Scavenger here. And I'm just coming into this from a little bit of a raw view. I looked at it a little bit more this morning, but the first thing I want to comment on is I love the way that this was organized. And I know this is like just the overall organization of the project and the scripts was really nice because there's quite a few scripts in here. We've got everything organized nicely, right? Like we've got our central folder here with like our enemy spawn, our managers, which I assume we're using like a managers. Let's see, managers, or this is the managers folder, I believe we're looking at. Let's go back to assets, scripts. Yeah. So we've got like our different folders here. If I jump into managers, this is where my game manager lives, my input manager, my object pool manager. So talking about object pooling, right? That's something that was used in this so that we're pooling everything and keeping it optimal. I actually want to go look at this object pool manager real quick and just take a look at it. I haven't seen this one yet. So we've got a couple of dictionaries of an active pool. We've got a dictionary of an inactive pool. And then basically from here, we're requesting an object. We can request an object at a specific position. And then, so this is just a really nice way to set up. This is actually probably the most complex group of code from this project. And again, it's 105 lines and really just making sure that we can get the values that we need. And then we can return the entries here if we need to, like, what is this? Yeah, to get the keys. Then, so this is just a really nice setup of pooling, which is great. Good.
One thing, just let me add while we are at it. I'm not a big fan of the, well, there are interfaces in this project, but like the
Yeah.
way it was named is I underscore something. That's actually not the recommended convention as per Microsoft. So, I mean, of course, there is no penalty for doing something like that. It just makes it difficult to read for somebody who has been using the Microsoft convention, for example. The I object reset is I underscore object reset is one of the interfaces.
Yep.
Or so yeah, I mean, otherwise that's just again me nitpicking. It's basically your code base, so do whatever you want. But
Right. But I mean, as part of a code review, our job is to, get a little nitpicky, right? And I think that's fair because one of the things you should consider when you're writing code is, are other developers going to interact with this? And if so, how how hard am I making it on them, right? Are my variables named aptly? Are my classes named well? Like, does everything explain itself in a way that they can just jump in and look at it? So it's a really, really good call out. Let's go take a look at the game manager really quick. So we've got our public static game manager instance. We got a private set, which I really, really like. Again, just keeping everything nice and clean. Something here. This is super nitpicky, but like leaving an empty start function here. It's like, why don't we just delete it, right? Clean the code up a little bit. Um, and then last player position. So this is just, if your players, again, I love the null check. I feel like this is something that like, it's stupid, it's silly, it's small, but it's just like a really nice case handle, right? Of like, well, okay, if I can't find a player, let's just avoid any no reference exceptions, right? So yeah, I really just dug the way this was put together. And yeah, just super easy. Set player and get your player position, and that's pretty much the game manager. Like really, really small, really sweet. That's another thing I liked about most of the projects here too is sometimes you see game managers and they start to get really unwieldy. Right? They're like, well, this is part of the game manager, so I better manage this and I better manage this. And suddenly you've got like 600, 700, 800 lines of code all building into this thing. And I just love this. Is like, no, this is everything I need to manage in the game. Done, set, and it works, right? Um, see, I object reset. Yep, back to that. Our pool manager here. And then we have a sound manager and we have an input manager. So we have a manager for everything we need to manage in the state, which I really, really liked. Let's see, let's go back here. So again, the ships, nice. So using a ship controller interface, again, the naming convention, but everything looking good from here. We can go to our ship behavior. So we have like our entity type. So what kind of type am I? Am I an entity? Or excuse me, an entity? Am I an enemy? Am I the player? Then we have like a list of our weapon slots, and this is kind of how everything's interactive. Again, not super huge. This is a little bit of a bigger class actually. This is 184, but we've got like our die, our dispose. What is dispose doing here? Object pool manager instance deactivate. Right. So again, using that pooling, we're not destroying and creating stuff, which means we'll have a nice optimal setup here. But those are pretty much. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
this one is probably my least favorite script on this particular game. That is why I mean that is because I think this script could actually be simplified.
Mm,
Because you have a ship behavior, this could basically serve as some sort of a base class where you have like the base class kind of takes care of all the object pooling and everything. And if you have like, of course you can go and change this in the future.
yeah.
If you have like an object like whatever else as a ship which is like a child of the base class, or like an implementer of the base class, that then in that way you are kind of opening yourself up for like extending in the future, I guess. uh, because extending this particular class, it will have some features, some of the behavior that you want, and some of the behavior that you probably won't have on other ships. So yeah, I mean, this could be simplified, but then again, you just have one type of ship, so that's not a problem for this one, I guess.
Right, but I think if the call out there is like, because based on the way this is organized, right, we do see ships. So I think that the onus there is to eventually make more ships.
Yeah,
And
in
so
that
yeah,
case, like the idea is to simplify this class as much as possible, because trust me, when you come back to this project maybe 6 months 7 months down the line, you'll probably not understand if there's a class which is longer than 100 lines of code properly. So the idea is to like break it down into as small pieces as possible, and then have those as individual things, like the solid principles, like just single responsibility of a class. So that is what I think this class was doing a little bit too much, in my opinion.
huh, fair. And I think that's really all the notes I have on feedback for this. I did want to take a look at the player input handler just a little bit because this looks like it's using the new input system here. So player ship action dot perform
Yeah.
dot cancel dot perform dot canceled. So I just love to see the new input system in use. It just makes me happy. I don't have like any code notes on it, but just seeing that, I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. Like again, this is a great option because then if you want to add other action sets, different control mechanisms, whatever, the new input system makes it really scalable and easy to do that. So just wanted to call that out and give you the big thumbs up and say thanks for using it. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I actually concur because this is one of the projects I think that is using the new input system, and that is actually great because new I cannot really emphasize on this enough. I understand there are people who are still using input.get button or get key down or something like
Yep.
that, and that is so easy to actually just slap on an update method and just keep doing. But trust me, if you get used to the new input system, this is like game changer. You won't really
Yep.
go back to that anymore just because of the flexibility that you'll have from this input system. It's like code once, perform anytime after that,
Yeah.
because you just add a new, like an input vector with a new controller or anything you want, and you never need to actually touch the game logic anymore ever again.
Yeah.
So
It really reflects this idea of like put a little bit more work in up front to make things way easier down the line, right? Because I mean,
yes,
you're absolutely right. Like I run into prototyping stuff all the time where I'm like, "Ugh, I should pull the new input system in, and then I'm like, yeah, but I just need to test really quick. I'm just gonna do an input.get access, right? And, and like for that moment, I am doing current Tom an awesome favor because current Tom just saved like 5 minutes, right? But Tom in 6 months, if I ever go back to that project and try to extend it, scale it, maybe I want to make it a mobile game and add like a mobile control rig as an example, which is something I'm looking at right now. It's so much easier just to add a new action set and swap those. So yeah, I could not agree more. Uh, but yeah, that's all the notes I had. Again, I thought this game was creative. It was fun. I don't know if like the designer and developer knew that I just love grappling hooks, but great setup for the game. I had a really good time playing it. Okay, should we jump into the last one?
yeah. Just before that, let me answer this question from Chris.
Yeah.
Chris, we are preparing our feedback on every game, so you will probably receive some sort of
Yes.
feedback from the
Mine is a
developers.
little bit behind Swarov's. It has been a busy 2 weeks, but I will also be adding my feedback in the document. I added feedback on the gameplay and the design already, and I'll try to go through and add personalized feedback in the next couple of days as well.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question. All right. You want to talk about the chess game up front, or shall I share my
Yeah,
screen?
I think we could. I only have one or two notes that I have for the implementation, and I think it'd be better to talk about it while you're talking about it, actually, because I can ask you some questions about why you think that is. Because I think if we're talking about what we know, it sounds to me like you know a lot, and being a senior engineer on the engine, you know a lot about like what like optimization pieces like that, what's going to actually flow better. So I have some questions for you. I want to ask about the code.
Ah, cool. So I'll just share my screen with this, and feel free to guide me to whichever script you want to ask me
Perfect.
questions on. Let me start sharing my screen. Let me know if you can see my script view.
Yep, I do see a code window.
Okay, okay. So is there any particular place you want to start, or we'll just start with the game manager?
Go ahead and start with the game manager, and I'll find the actual code I was thinking of because I've got to remember which class it was.
No problem. So the well, this is about 300 lines of code, but
Okay.
then, uh, I mean, I could definitely move it to different parts, but again, it's a game like chess, so it's fine. What I don't really like in a way is that this is frequently called this method,
Yep.
and you are calling get component on it. So if there is a way to basically cache this, because what
Yep.
happens on the like what if we want to understand what exactly causes a performance problem in a game, for example. So I don't know how many of you guys know about this, but Unity, the engine, is made of largely two parts of code bases. One is in C++, which we know as a native code base
Yep.
or the engine itself, and the other is in C sharp, which is the code base that you basically interact with. So, for example, if you go to the definition of get component, uh, it has a get component fast path. If you like, go down this route, you will eventually reach an extern command, which is basically a C++ command. The idea of you know getting your games around is that try to once you have gotten started with the game. For example, there's an update loop going on, or a fix update, or some sort of a collision happening. You want to minimize this interaction between the C sharp and the C++ classes, because each time that happens in a running game, C sharp is going to allocate some most of the times it will allocate some garbage piece, or some how do you say, boilerplate code that is not really necessary, but it is there, and then the garbage collector will come and collect it eventually, unless you are handling that yourself.
Right.
And the C++ class is going to basically interact with that garbage piece. Well, it's not really garbage. It's not unnecessary. When I say garbage, I don't really mean trash. Yeah, sometimes people ask me, if it's garbage, why do we generate it? It's not garbage. It's just memory allocation that gets orphaned, that is not required after a certain period of time. So when you're going to the get component part, or when you're going to something else, for example, find objects by ID, find objects by type, or something like that,
Right.
you are basically going to the engine and saying, hey, because every piece of your game, every game object has a C sharp component and a C++ component. And the get component or other stuff, they work by querying the C++ part of the game object, and then getting information out of there in order to have a complete picture, and then presenting you with that context. So if you do that in a code base that is frequently called, then you are just giving away, giving away performance for free. You don't really want to do that. Instead, what you want to do is this piece, it on its awake or something, on its start, it can basically get that component itself and cache it.
Yep.
That's one operation when you are constructing this piece. And and then you can just get this, well, you're getting the piece anyway, and instead of game object piece, you can basically get the piece itself, and then just get the cached piece from there,
Yep.
instead of getting component. That's just one part.
Yep.
This seems to be an expensive. Okay, one more thing is, I really like the way how, I think it is feedback that was used here. Let's see. I think it was feedback. I really really like how this was used in this project. So this project has, what in game design terms we call juice. So what juice is basically, it's anticipation, or adding some sort of an animation, effects, sound effects, camera shake, whatever, to emphasize a particular, like something is going on in the game, and that is very well done in this one. So like feedback and everything, that's actually part of that. I also like how you are doing it from, well, this you're doing it from here, but at the same time, I think this came with the yeah, this is yours, I think. Yeah, I really like how this is being done from here, instead of being interspaced everywhere around the project, because it's very easy to just play something feedback and have that code just proliferate your whole project. That's not happening here. You have one single part where you can basically change even the feedback engine if you want, in this particular part, and this line of code does not necessarily need to change. So I really like that one part as well. uh the other parts, okay, let's see. You also have elementary feedback here, and you're always going back to the element manager. That's actually very nice. There are helper functions. I really like how the region was, introduced for us. I think this is for me to actually read the code in a better way than for than for somebody who's constructing the code. Although I think it is helpful for both of us, because in 6-7 months time, just like I said, you'll probably want to train yourself, if you want to get back to this code base again. Uh, these could be renamed to variables, but other than that, this is just nitpicky. This is fine. This is completely understandable part. I also like how you use a lot of mathematics instead of something like collision, or
Yep.
other stuff which can have performance impact. Mathematics, for example, is a lot cheaper than a lot of other things,
Yep.
because computers, they are great in crunching numbers, right? So what's happening here is, this is a script that is controlling the whole game, and then you have an element which could be one of these. This
Yeah.
is basically that rock paper scissors aspect of the game. So you have like every element has a cancellation thing. One element can cancel another. If you cancel an element without the appropriate element, then you basically lose your own piece as well. There is an element manager. One thing that is more or less a nitpick here is, because it's a chess game, I see a lot of this game has mono behaviors on it. So instead of having every script logic, for example, this does not need to be in a mono behavior at all, or like any of this probably doesn't need to be a mono behavior. What I would suggest you do is like create these in their separate classes, which are just normal C# classes, and then maybe write unit tests to ensure that they are always in place. Uh, that way, if even if you want to refactor your game at some points, your tests are going to be your harness. You will never really break stuff without knowing about them in advance. Move selector again is pretty straightforward. You're casting ray here. Using the ray cast, you're basically moving. This part is probably good for its own, for its own thing here. Instead of, because this just, if I'm nitpicking again, so this is like this could itself be in a function, because this is actually too much information. And if this is extracted in a function that just says, we are highlighting a tile, or we are pointing from grid or something, it is much easier to actually read and get across than going through this and figuring out what's happening. The similar thing is basically this. If I understand correctly, you are trying to move something or capture something. So these two can then be their own functions
Yeah.
about moving or capturing. But again, of course, this is nitpicky, and
Yeah.
this is like somebody's style. You want to add something here,
I actually want
Thomas?
to ask you a question that came up in the chat. I think is really good. Mohi Aldin is saying, when you say you like mathematical functions instead of collision, is there
Mhm.
something wrong with using collisions? And I know you mentioned, that computers are just better at crunching numbers, so mathematical positioning is always just way more optimal. But is there anything problematic with using collisions, like for example, shooting a ray, returning the hit of the object, that type of stuff?
No, absolutely not. So there's nothing wrong with collision. You just have to understand that when you're using collision, for example, or any of the physics effects, raycast, boxcast, whatever
Yeah.
whatever you have, um, what happens is, just a sec. Think, yeah, never mind. So what happens is, it uses a part of Unity engine called a physics engine that may or may not be external engine. For example, we have physics
Like
internally and
Havoc
Havoc
or
externally.
whatever. Yeah.
It's like when you're spinning an engine like that is itself its own calculation index. So there is again some performance out there. If you can help it, it will just run your game faster. If you can, for example, instead of casting array, if you can, for example, set out a distance, a vector 3 distance from a certain position, and then try and figure out which all objects are within that distance,
Yeah.
that is a lot cheaper operation than this. But sometimes this is I would say a lot more convenient. For example,
Right.
in a first person shooter or something, that you just cast array and get done with it. And yeah, I mean, there's not a right answer to this. It just depends on the situation.
Yeah.
When it comes to a game like chess, where you're playing on a tile, it is actually quite easy to do it based on mathematics, because your maths is just in that tile, right? You don't need to have like a colliding body. Is best suited for unexpected interactions, where you can basically bump into something where you don't have any prior information as to how to calculate that.
Yeah.
But something like chess is actually quite well done in terms of mathematics. You
Yeah.
can you can basically do that. But again, maths is hard and collision is
Yeah.
convenient. So it's a best of both worlds. Basically, try and do what you want to do here.
Yeah.
All I would suggest is probably profile your game as much as possible. If you're getting the frame rate that you want to achieve, then do whatever you want, man.
100%. Yeah, as long as it's hitting like the targets for the device you're building for, you're good, right? But I love that call out though. And again, I think there's a really important piece to talk that it's come up a couple times in this, whether intentionally or not, is what are you doing to support the future developer of yourself? Like, what is future you going to think about past you when you get back into this code base later, right? And I think thinking about optimization early on is another way you can really do yourself a favor because like thinking about it from this perspective, what if, let's say you launch your game, it does really, really well, and you decide, you know what, I want to grow my audience. I need to hit more mobile devices. So I want to hit like older Android devices, right? Well, if past you was really optimal, future you is not going to be as upset or have to do as much work, right? So I think, it's really, while it's hard to predict all your endpoint and use cases, it's not a bad idea to try to be optimal up front, right? Like a little bit of extra work early can save you from a lot. And you can apply that to anything in development or product building, right? Like accessibility is another great thing to consider, right? If you implement accessibility in your game design up front, it's a lot easier to modify and enhance that accessibility down the road than it is to actually go into your code base and bolt it on later. So I think it's really just about, taking care of the future you is really what a lot of this is about. So
Yep, I absolutely agree to that. Also, in that same vein, while I was like what I was mentioning earlier, if you are going to extract all of this logic in their own methods, what you will do to yourself is that you'll just look at this. For example, instead of this, if I just say, what was this doing again? It was basically getting a grid point. Never mind. If instead of this, if I just say, I don't know, move something. Okay,
yeah,
if they were function like move, and
yep,
that's it. It's just so much easier for your eyes. You just you can grasp what's going on, and then if you're more interested in what this move is doing, then you can basically go in inside this function, and you can look at this code,
yep,
and if there's something that you want to change. And the idea is to make your code base as modular as possible, so that you have the
yep,
flexibility to take out any of those modules anytime you want, and then just uh, like that just makes your life like. And also the other thing is, like, if you're a lone developer, if you're somebody who's just wanting to develop a game, but you also have a checklist of the things that you want to get done, it's so much easier to kind of take out modules and replace them with something similar, and just keep on checking that checkbox, and you're going to be motivated for longer than if you just have to go through a quite a long code base and figuring out what's going on there.
agreed.
uh,
Cool.
yeah, I'll probably just go through a few of these other scripts. I really like how well, just what I was saying. This is a player class, and you didn't have to put it in a mono behavior. That's really something I appreciate, because again, so when you what happens when you do this? Let's actually basically go into a mono behavior class. So you see this script. It's it's a 245 lines of code basically, and when you're giving something as a when you're basically marking something as a mono behavior, what you're doing is giving that particular class all these abilities that a
Right.
mono behavior has. And sometimes you don't need them. Sometimes all you need to do is somehow attach your script somewhere so that your script runs, and you don't need maybe transform positions or scales or any of that stuff. You just need to do that. So there, you can do that in a lot of ways. For example, you can have one mono behavior that you can subscribe to. You can keep your code running, but at the same time, the code itself is kind of in its own thing, which makes it easier to test, easier to integrate later. You can also have smaller classes, for example, or there is a pattern called humble object. You can look it up online. Humble object is basically extracting the game logic in its own C sharp class, and then the mono behavior is kind of a reference. It's referencing that particular C sharp class. It can even construct that C sharp class. It can create the C sharp class in itself, and but at the same time, like, there's no logic tied to that mono behavior. So that is the idea, and I really like how this class is constructed. Yeah, I mean, do you have anything to add here, Thomas?
No, that's a great call out. I actually didn't notice that in the player class. I don't think this is a script I got to look at, but it is very, very nice. Just like, hey, I have a class. It's called player. It's got a constructor. If I need it, I reach out to it. I build it. I'm good. Yeah, just really eloquent.
Yeah, I think it's the same with. No, the piece is a mono behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a class where, for example, you can already see that this class is doing a lot of things. You have the feedback references here.
Yep.
You also have an identifier here, which is basically taking care of the mesh renderer. Um, you also have the element, which is a class. Yes, this is fine. This is the piece element. You also have the directions, and so these things they can basically be part of the element itself and not be part of the mono
Yep.
behavior. What I'm trying to say here is that anytime you're using a mono behavior class, you use, for example, the mesh render, the components that you can get from that particular class
Yep.
type. You use the game object, you use the transform, and those things, and anything else which is the logic of that is going to influence that particular class could stay in something like this, for example.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that's mostly it
Cool.
about this game. I really like how this game is constructed, but there were a few things that I wanted to discuss about it.
Perfect.
But at the same time, I think one maybe this is probably a personal preference, but I would really like some sort of an onboarding on that game, like a
Agreed.
tutorial, or even
Yep.
even even like a text as to how to go about it, because for the player for the first time, it might be a little confusing as to what's happening.
Yep.
I mean, you see the board and you think of chess, right? And you're playing chess and you suddenly lose your own pawn or something like that.
Yep.
That might be a little concerning, or like confusing for the player.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it was done well. So
Yeah.
that is just like a cherry on top,
Yep.
let's say.
I'm
A
glad
bonus.
you got that feedback because that was exactly my playing experience, right? It was like, all right, this is chess. I know how to play chess. And then it was like, wait, why did I die? Okay, wait, what are these icons on the top right of the screen? Let me go look. Wait, oh, is this rock, paper, scissors? Is that what this means? Okay, how does rock, paper, scissors work, right? So I actually went through like this iteration of learning where, a tutorial pop up, hey, this is rock, paper, scissors. This is what happens. Look in the top right, like a couple call outs. I would have dove in. Another piece of feedback I had, and it's interesting because like obviously I think this was meant from the perspective of like just one person, and I'm not sure how this would impact the mathematical calculations, but like I think a camera flip would have added a lot of juice to this game. So
Oh
like
yeah,
when it
oh
goes
yeah.
to the black player versus the white or whatever, if it just like swung the camera around, right, could do a really nice like flip back and forth to make the like the hot seat cooperative a little more engaging. Um, just those are like my gameplay feedback ideas. From Marcel actually asking, do you think that player class should have been a struct instead?
The player class. Let me see.
So that was the yeah right here.
Well, you have a list of it. You could. It really depends on how you're using the player class. Let me actually have a look at the usages. If this player class is being put in some sort of a list, then probably yes. If not, then probably not. I mean, looking at the the signature of the class, or the footprint of the class, it hardly matters because you're hardly allocating anything except for the string place probably. The color is probably an int. It's an enum, yeah. So it's an int. So it's just this list of game object thing that is kind of hard to do, because what happens with a struct is that once you have a struct constructed, it's difficult to add in or remove one from
Mhm.
from that particular structs list or something like that. So because you have these two things here, I'd probably keep it still a class. But if for example these were somewhere else, then this could be a struct for sure. There's nothing else that stops it from being one. Um, yeah, I was saying something about the rock paper Caesar thing. Yes, the camera flip. Sorry, I was talking about the camera flip.
Yep.
Actually, it's very easy to do if you use Cinemachine. By the way, it
Yeah,
just put two camera positions and just
and just
um,
and you get a
move it
nice
between
tween.
them.
Yep.
Yeah, it would look really nice. So that's a feedback. That will probably just put it in something that could be done. But yeah,
I
overall, very, very nice
I
game.
love Cinemachine. Like legitimately, unless I have to teach somebody to write a camera follow script, Cinemachine all day.
So so the thing is, like, if there's somebody who's coming from old school Unity, where you actually have to have some sort of a gimbal code where
Yeah.
the camera is following, or you have like some update function that is like running the camera follow or something like that through a weighted LARP or something
Hmm.
similar. and you teach and you get to tell them about Cinemachine. It's like you're basically speaking gospel.
Yeah,
The look in their eyes, yeah, it gets me all the time.
yeah. It's like, oh no, and you can choose your camera lens. Yeah, Cinemachine is great. Um, well, cool. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, and we've answered all the questions.
I'll just stop sharing the screen.
Yeah, let's see. Are there any final questions before we call it good? Again, thank you to everybody that submitted the game. We did get to play every game, which was really fun. And if you didn't get like one of these awards, your game was still very good. All the games submitted this year were super awesome. They were a blast. We just had
Yeah,
to pick
yeah,
three.
I absolutely reckon on that. I have already played all of them, and I have like put in my feedback for most of them. I think there's just three games that I'm still evaluating on feedbacks, but otherwise, yeah, great work, everyone. It's really awesome to see people using Unity and kind of bringing their A game while making these games here. So I'm, as part of this company and as a lifelong fan of the engine, I'm really glad that everyone is having so much fun making these games.
Yeah, absolutely. And big thank you to you, Swarov. Like, I feel like every time I do a session with you, which we need to do more together, because I learn like 10 things every time we hang out. So selfishly, we just need to spend more time in calls together.
Oh,
So
dude, that's, the pleasure is all mine. So yeah, just ping me anytime you want.
sounds good. All right.
Great.
Oleg and the
Great,
Great.
guys. Yeah, yeah, great, guys. I wanted to ask this, Thomas. You mentioned that you were gonna share the link with the games. So
Yes,
in
I
the
threw them.
beginning, yeah.
I threw them in the public chat.
Oh, already in the
Um,
chat.
yep,
Fantastic.
Yeah, yeah,
yep.
they're there.
So there, those are the three winners. They're all in the chat, ready for you.
Yeah. Then I think, are there any more questions? Is there an opportunity to follow up with after the feedback, a bit more of a dialogue as opposed as a transactional one-way feedback? I think.
I am going to share my LinkedIn ID
Oh,
here.
that's a great
You can
idea.
reach out to me anytime. Any of the people, if you want to reach out to me regarding any of the games or any question in general about game development, I'm always very, very happy to answer. And in general, if you want to connect with me, it would be my pleasure. So just reach out to me if you have any questions or any for example, if you, for example, make a game in the future and you want me to have a look at it and give you some feedback on that, I'm even game for that. So
Yeah, absolutely. And same here. I'll drop my LinkedIn. If you are a student making games, specifically, like my team really wants to engage, uplift, and like show off student work, right? So send me anything and everything you're building. And when I say student, I don't mean just at an academic institution. If you are a lifelong learner, if you're going through Unity Learn, if you're switching careers, if you're learning Unity for the first time, if you are a student in the sense of you are learning game dev, period, I would love to see what you're doing, and we'll happily do our best to uplift it and share it to the world. So thank you all very much.